I was 21, full of energy, riding my scooter on a quiet road outside Houston, Texas. Back then, I had no idea my world was about to flip upside down. It was late summer 2017. The sun was out, and the breeze felt good on my face. I remember swerving to dodge a little squirrel, thinking I could save us both from harm. But the squirrel darted one way, and I did too. Next thing I knew, I flew straight into a tree. I was thrown off so hard that I tore the tendons in my right hand. Later, I learned I would need surgery. I was scared because I had never been under anesthesia. My mom tried to calm me, saying it would be fine. But once they put the mask on, I had some weird reaction, and my heart just stopped. The surgeon said my heart stayed silent for 7 minutes, though it felt like a flash to me. In that short time, I had what folks call a near-death experience. And that's when everything changed. It felt like I blinked, and suddenly I was standing upright in a place that looked so grand it took my breath away. My very first thought was, is this some special hospital wing? But it was far bigger than any building I had known. I would soon learn that it was an orientation center, a place on the other side where souls arrive once they leave Earth. I glanced down a massive hallway made of smooth white marble that stretched out for what seemed like forever. On one side, I saw these giant columns with fine details carved into them. On the other side, there were grand doorways with warm light pouring out. By every doorway stood a marble table with 2 people seated. They were dressed in simple but elegant clothes. My mind spun as I tried to make sense of it. Then I saw an older man who had just come through a glowing tunnel. He clutched his chest as if his heart hurt. A kind woman stood up from one of the tables and hurried to him. She took his hands and guided him back to her table. She held his hands the whole time she spoke to him. I noticed this faint shimmer around them, as if the air was charged with comfort. As she kept talking, that old man began to shift. I watched his face lose its lines and his hair turn darker. In moments, he looked around 30. It blew my mind. That's when my guide showed up. I call him my guide because he seemed to know me. He stood by my side and spoke without moving his lips. Yet I heard him like he was right next to my ear. He told me I was in the orientation center, which was where we arrive when we pass away from Earth. The tunnel I saw was that classic light at the end of the tunnel folks talk about. This is the place people step into once they leave their earthly bodies. I asked why that man changed from old to young, and my guide said, "Everyone here appears around their 30s. It's just how souls choose to be." This guide took me by the arm and led me down a beautiful corridor. The marble floors shone like fresh snow, and everything looked pure. We walked through another passage that opened into a grand courtyard. The air felt light, and I sensed I was breathing in love. I can't put it better than that. It felt like breathing in love itself. My guide smiled, as if he already knew what I was feeling. I asked where we were going, and he said he wanted to show me what the other side is like so that I could share it later. He first took me to this building that looked like a Greek temple. Huge white pillars lined the front, and wide steps led up to heavy doors. Inside, the space was enormous. Rows and rows of shelves stretched out so far that I couldn't see where they ended. People sat at tables, reading, studying, or chatting in soft voices. Some looked up and nodded at me as I passed. They wore different styles of clothes, but each face held a calm glow. My guide said this was a library for learning. He explained that on Earth, we carry nothing except what we learn. And that's why there's such a strong focus on growth here. Then we went to a smaller room off to the side. A tall screen on the wall showed an event from American history, a cavalry battle from hundreds of years back. A woman stood in front of it, wearing a long purple gown. She had her back to me, and her black hair fell to her waist. She was watching that old scene, As if it were a live broadcast, my guide told me everything in our lives is recorded. If you want to study any moment in history, you can step into one of these rooms and see it unfold. It made me wonder how many things we do on Earth that we think are lost. Here, nothing is lost. We left that library and moved to a place that looked like a medieval castle. At first, I thought I was dreaming. It had tall towers, thick stone walls, and a huge wooden door. My guide told me that if someone wants to learn about medieval times, they can come here and walk through this castle. They can see how kings, queens, and knights lived. As we walked in, I noticed red carpeting on the floor and tall walls on each side with paintings of royal families. Beneath each painting stood a podium with thick books that held every detail of those people's lives. Their words, their deeds, even their private conversations recorded. I felt so small thinking about how we spend our lives. Everything is kept in a kind of cosmic record. My guide then showed me a young woman descending a spiral staircase. She had strawberry blonde hair and wore a red gown with a golden sash. She greeted me politely and asked if I needed help. I was speechless. Now I wish I had asked her a million questions. But in that moment, I just said, "I'm only looking, thanks." My guide told me that this woman loves to study medieval history, so her job is to assist anyone who comes there to learn. And get this, jobs on the other side aren't for money, since money isn't a thing there. You do what you love because that's your passion. It's simple and pure. Then my guide took me somewhere that to this day makes my heart ache to go back. He walked me through another hallway, and we arrived at a large round structure that reminded me of a sports stadium. He said it was a planetarium. The outside was curved with a wide dome on top. Inside were thousands of seats arranged in a circle, all facing a giant ceiling that looked ready for a star show. I sat down and the lights dimmed. A gentle voice behind me said, "When people on Earth look at the sky, this is what they see." Stars popped up and I recognized our familiar constellations and the planets of our solar system. Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, even Pluto. After that, the lights flickered. Then the voice said, "When we look at the sky, this is what we see." Suddenly, clusters of distant worlds showed up in a vast panorama. Hundreds, then thousands, then countless glowing points of light filled the dome. My chest felt like it was going to burst from awe. The voice said, "Life is far more widespread than you can imagine." Just seeing that made me want to stay there forever. I'd always loved astronomy, even though math was never my strong suit. Now, though, I found that simple wonder was enough to bond me to those stars. Everything felt so connected. I realized Earth is only a speck in a sea of endless life. At one point, my guide led me to a wide green field lit by a gentle glow. There I met Jesus. He felt like an old friend. I didn't see his face in detail because he was so bright, like lightning in human form. But I saw his hands, his simple white robe, the golden sash, and those sandals that laced up his calves. He had the warmest presence. It was a rush of love that made my knees weak. He said only one sentence to me, "You must tell them there is no death." I felt that strong surge of love. I understood there was no judgment in him, no scolding for my failings. He knew every silly thing I'd ever done, and none of it mattered in a bad way. He understood why life is so tough and how we struggle on Earth. That love is the biggest thing I remember. It's calm, steady, and patient. If you've ever worried about being judged or shamed, I can tell you that isn't how it works there. The feeling is like being wrapped in a warm blanket of acceptance. Then it all vanished. I snapped back into my body in the recovery room. My hand hurt, and I heard beeping monitors. The nurses were frantic at first, but then they realized my heartbeat was strong. Later, they said, "Mark, you gave us a scare." I kept quiet for a while, trying to process what had just happened. Did I dream it? It felt too real. Over the next few days, I fell into a deep sadness because I didn't want to be here anymore. I wanted to go back to that love, that peace. People asked if I gained special gifts. I didn't come back with psychic powers or anything like that. What I have is a crystal clear memory of the other side. It's still fresh, like it happened 5 minutes ago. I remember each building, each person, each smell and sound. The biggest change is how I live now. I don't see death as an end or something to dread. It's a return home, a place where we find the love we always crave. I also realize that the only thing we carry from this life is what we learn. Love, compassion, growth, the stuff that shapes our soul. Money and status fade. They don't matter when you step into that bright place. And you will step there, because we all do. There's a calm in knowing that the universe is far bigger and more loving than we think. Sometimes I lie awake at night, missing that feeling of God's nearness. On the other side, you feel God like the air around you. It's a rush of pure love. You feel safe, known, and treasured. When I came back, I felt like someone ripped me out of my true home. Even so, I realize I have work to do here. Jesus told me, "You must tell them there is no death." That phrase is burned into my mind. I hope by sharing this, I can ease someone's fear about passing on. Life on earth can be rough. We have bills, pain, heartbreak, and fears that spin our heads in all directions. There, we don't have those same worries. There is no economy. You do what you love because you just love it. You still learn, but it's a joyful kind of learning. You never stop growing, and you're never forced to chase anything. You're free in a way that's hard to explain. When people ask me why I think we come to Earth at all, I say maybe we're here to grow our souls in ways we can't do on the other side. This place is a crash course in love, pain, and choice. Sometimes I think we're here to learn empathy or forgiveness, or even just to see if we can love others the way God loves us. I'm still not sure, but that's what I suspect. I know many folks might say, "How do you know this wasn't just a dream?" Trust me, I've had dreams before. This was something else. There was a clarity and a real sense of being alive that I've never felt in any dream. I felt like myself, but more awake and more sure of things. I can't prove it to anyone else, but I know what happened. It's as real to me as breathing.